Agenda on Dubai Eye 103.8.
We are moving the conversation on to a health topic that I know concerns a lot of us. Now, diabetes prevalence in the UAE when it comes to adults, it's greater than 20%. So it's fair to say that dropping our sugar consumption is critical from a public health standpoint. We have seen significant excise taxes on products with added sugar and sweeteners, especially when you talk about sugary drinks. So I want to know from you, do you find yourself reaching for alternatives? Stevia is one that's particularly popular, but is it actually better for us? Are there hidden side effects that we need to know about? We're joined by Dr. Fareeha Rizvi, consultant endocrinologist and diabetologist at NMC Healthcare, to chat a little bit more about this. Dr. Fareeha, thanks for joining us today on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Hi to all the listeners out there. I'm really excited to discuss this topic. It's something I talk about every day, mainly because I'm asked about it every day.
Yeah, let's start with the basics on that, though, because when we talk about some of these alternatives, and let's start with stevia. What exactly is stevia? How is it different from a regular granulated sugar in terms of what it does to our bodies?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So sugar is sucrose, which I'm sure all of your viewers have consumed at some point in their life. Stevia is a plant extract. It comes from the stevia plant. And the way that it works is the extract is similar in taste to sucrose, but it's a lot more concentrated. So the sweetness is actually 200 to 300 times sweeter than sucrose. So you need a lot less of it to get the same sweet taste. So it is a natural plant extract, but it's a lot sweeter, so we need a lot less of it. That's the way it works, basically.
And it can be confusing because there are a lot of zero-calorie sweeteners that are on the market. We've talked about stevia. There's aspartame is another common one.
Yep.
In terms of understanding the alternatives, as consumers, how can we make sense of it all? What are your recommendations on understanding some of those different alternatives?
Yeah, so stevia, like I mentioned, is natural. Because it's so sweet, you essentially get the sweetness for no calories. Aspartame that you mentioned is synthetic, so it's not a plant derivative. It's a derivative of an amino acid. So an amino acid is a protein building block, and aspartame is like a modified synthetic version of an amino acid. And aspartame is found very widely in diet sodas, as you mentioned, sugar-free gums, loads of, food items. And it is also used on the same basis that it's 180 to 200 times sweeter than sugar. The problem with aspartame is people with phenylketonuria need to avoid it. Phenylketonuria, or PKU, is a metabolic disease. So people with that disease need to avoid aspartame. Aspartame, again, is safe. It's been around for a long time. It's been very well studied. It probably, it doesn't have any calories, but it probably does. All of these sweeteners have some effect on your own insulin levels, because remember, the human body has evolved over, hundreds and thousands, millions of years to recognize sugar, which is sucrose. So when a sweet taste comes into our mouth, our body recognizes that as sucrose or sugar, and our body releases insulin. And when we release this insulin over and over, time and time again, at high amounts, that leads to insulin resistance, and that leads to diabetes, which is what you mentioned in your opening, blurb there. So how do we keep our insulin levels low? That should be the real question. To avoid disease, we need to reverse insulin resistance. And the way we do that is by cutting out all sugar and by reducing sweeteners. So we shouldn't really be using sweeteners long term. Any type of sweetener.
And I'm thinking instantly of friends I know who will reach for 3 Coke Zeros or Sprite Zeros in a sitting, because it's got that zero aspect on it, the idea of 0 calories. But there's more to consider there, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So you're quite right. Zero drinks are a great marketing technique. I drink, zero drinks as well, but I'll really limit myself as to how much I'll drink, because, there's obviously the chemical aspect of the zero drink, but there's also the behavioral aspect of it. So we don't, as a human species, I believe, we definitely don't need sugar in our diet. We get the energy we need from carbohydrates. So sugar is just a pleasurable thing that we've added into our diets, and then we crave sugar and we become addicted to sugar. So how do we, as a society, particularly here in Dubai, where, convenience and food is all around us all the time, how do we kind of break the habit, break the cravings, and really recognize the damage that sugar and artificial sweeteners can do if we use those as a crutch, or we become dependent on artificial sweeteners and drinks, for example. We need to kind of recognize what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and eventually move towards just drinking water or drinking herbal teas or drinking sparkling water, for example, with lemon, something like that. That's the message that I really want to get out there, that you can use artificial sweeteners as a crutch to get you off of sugar, but it's not something you should be using long-term, ideally.
Well, that's a nice ideal, I think, for many, is just to cut it all out, right? But I think the reality is many people feel hooked. Their cravings, they feel they can't fight. What's your quick advice on how to break that sugar addiction, but not just the sugar addiction, the sweetness addiction, in a gradual way that's realistic?
You need to identify all sources of sugar in your diet, and like you said, gradually cut them out. So whether that's making a swap to an artificial sweetener for a week or two, trying to reduce the portions of sugar, so donuts, granola bars, cookies, these sorts of things, try and just have, if you can, half of what you normally have for a week or two, and then gradually cut it out. And that's a really well-proven way to reduce cravings and to also, change behavior. You need to fill up with protein at each meal. You need to be well hydrated, and you need to eat green vegetables. The human body has evolved to eat protein and green vegetables and whole grain carbs. The phenomenon of sugar is a relatively recent phenomenon. So we need to remember that and recognize that. There's lots of other things we can do. We can use, as I mentioned, herbal teas. Look at the amount of caffeine you take as well in your diet, because when we have caffeine crashes and dips and highs and lows, we often reach for sugar. So there's lots of different hidden sources of sugar that I just want everyone to take a moment to look at. And remember, if you cut out sugar is actually very aging. So if you are spending lots of money on expensive skincare, it won't work until you cut out sugar. It's the secret to longevity.
That's the thing. Hit us where we really care. It's our aesthetic look, right? That's going to be affected by this. Yes. Dr. Fareeha, thank you so much for joining us, educating us on this. I know that you do speak about this a lot as well on social media for people that are looking to find out more. How can they follow you there?
Yeah, so on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook and LinkedIn, I have 100,000 followers. I've got about 600 videos that I've posted over the last 2 years. So you can find me at Diabetes Care with Dr. F. Rizvi, all one word.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. See you soon.
That is the voice there of Dr. Fareeha Rizvi, consultant endocrinologist, diabetologist at NMC Healthcare. And as she mentioned, listen, there's good reasons. If you're worried about wrinkles, if you're worried about aging, then this is something that you should do, is simply cut out your sugar. It will help you. So that's a little motivation for us all.
The Agenda on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can always tune in to the live show on Dubai Eye 103.8 from 10 a.m.